The microwave oven. In the 1940s, engineer Percy Spencer was working at Raytheon, researching magnetrons. These devices were mainly used in radar systems and were not designed for kitchen appliances. One day, while Spencer was standing near an operating magnetron, he noticed that a candy bar in his pocket had begun to melt. Most people might simply have complained about the mess on their clothes, but Spencer began to wonder whether the microwaves produced by the magnetron could heat food directly. He then experimented with popcorn kernels, which quickly popped. In 1945, he built a device that used microwaves to cook food. Over time, it developed into the microwave oven we know today. So, whenever you heat a meal in just a few seconds, remember that it all began with a candy bar that melted by accident, penicillin. In 1928, Alexander Fleming was cultivating staphylococcal bacteria. One of his petri dishes was accidentally contaminated with mold. Normally, such a dish might simply have been thrown away, but Fleming noticed a clear area around the mold where no bacteria were growing. This suggested that the mold was releasing a substance capable of inhibiting bacterial growth. Fleming named the substance penicillin. However, at the time, he was unable to purify it reliably or produce it in large quantities. It was not until more than a decade later, when Howard Florey, Ernst Chain, and their team continued the research, that penicillin was developed into a medicine that could be used on a large scale, X-rays. In 1895, German physicist Wilhelm Röntgen was studying cathode ray tubes. There was a fluorescent screen near his experimental equipment. Even when the tube was covered, the screen continued to glow. Röntgen discovered that the unknown rays could pass through cardboard, wood, and thin metal, but could not easily penetrate denser materials. Later, when he placed his hand between the rays and the screen, he could even see the shadows of his finger bones. A few weeks later, he took an image of his wife's hand. The picture showed not only her bones, but also the ring on her finger. Because no one knew what the rays actually were, Röntgen named them X-rays, using the mathematical symbol for an unknown quantity. Today, hospitals can examine broken bones and internal structures without cutting open the body, all because of a screen that glowed when it was not supposed to. Superglue. During World War II, chemist Harry Coover was searching for a transparent material that could be used to make precision optical components. During his experiments, he encountered a group of compounds known as cyanoacrylates. The problem was that the material was far too sticky. It quickly bonded to laboratory equipment and was completely unsuitable for the original research objective, so it was initially set aside as a failed material. Later, Coover realized that being too sticky could, from another perspective, be exactly what made it an extremely powerful adhesive. It eventually became the product we know as superglue. Post-it notes. In 1968, 3M scientist Spencer Silver was trying to create an extremely strong adhesive. Instead, the adhesive he produced was not strong enough at all. It could stick to objects, but it could also be removed easily and reused repeatedly. Silver believed the material must have a practical use, but for years he could not find the right product for it. Several years later, his colleague Art Fry encountered a small problem. He used slips of paper to mark hymns in his church choir book, but the pieces of paper kept falling out. He remembered Silver's failed adhesive and applied it to the edges of the paper, creating a bookmark that stayed in place without damaging the pages. They later discovered that people did not use the notes only as bookmarks. They also wrote messages on them. That was how Post-it notes were born. Had the adhesive been as strong as originally intended, Post-it notes might never have existed. Teflon. In 1938, chemist Roy Plunkett was working at DuPont, researching new refrigerants. He stored a gas in a steel cylinder. When he opened the valve the next day, no gas came out, yet the cylinder had not lost any weight. Plunkett did not dismiss it as a problem with an empty cylinder. He cut the cylinder open and discovered a white solid inside. The gas had polymerized on its own, forming polytetrafluoroethylene, or PTFE, the material that later became widely known as Teflon. The material could withstand high temperatures, had very low friction, and did not react easily with other substances. It was eventually used in cookware coatings, industrial equipment, electronics, and aerospace components. Teflon was not what the researchers had originally intended to create. It was simply the batch of gas that had disappeared inside the cylinder. Vulcanized rubber. Early natural rubber was extremely difficult to use. In hot weather, it became soft, sticky, and could even melt. In cold weather, it hardened and cracked. Products made from this material could not cope well with seasonal changes. Charles Goodyear spent years trying to improve rubber. In one accidental discovery, rubber mixed with sulfur came into contact with a hot surface. Goodyear found that, after being heated, the rubber was no longer as easily affected by temperature as ordinary rubber. This process, later known as vulcanization, made rubber stronger, more stable, and more durable. It laid the foundation for tires and countless other industrial rubber products. Interestingly, the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company later adopted his name, although Charles Goodyear himself did not establish the company. His true contribution was transforming a sticky natural material that could tolerate neither heat nor cold into something essential to modern industry: the implantable cardiac pacemaker. In 1950, 1956, engineer Wilson Greatbatch was building a device designed to record heart sounds. While assembling the circuit, he accidentally used the wrong resistor. Instead of operating continuously as expected, the device began producing a regular pulse, followed by a pause, and then another pulse. Greatbatch immediately realized that the rhythm resembled a heartbeat. Rather than replacing the incorrect component, he began to wonder whether such a circuit could actively help the heart maintain a steady rhythm. After years of improvement and testing, the first Greatbatch implantable cardiac pacemakers were used in human patients in 1960. Bubble wrap. In 1957, two engineers, Alfred Fielding and Mark Chavon, were trying to create a new type of wallpaper. They pressed two layers of plastic film together and trapped air bubbles between them, hoping the three-dimensional texture would become a fashionable form of interior decoration. Almost no one wanted to put it on their walls. However, the material was extremely lightweight, provided insulation, and could absorb impacts. The two inventors first attempted to market it as insulation for greenhouses, but later discovered that it was best suited for protecting fragile items during shipping. Eventually, the failed wallpaper became bubble wrap. So every time you pop a sheet of bubble wrap, you are actually popping a piece of home decor that never became fashionable. The first commercial synthetic dye. In 1856, 18-year-old chemistry student William Perkin was attempting to synthesize quinine artificially. Quinine was an important treatment for malaria at the time, but Perkin's experiment did not produce quinine. Instead, it left behind a dark-colored residue. While cleaning his laboratory equipment, he discovered that the residue formed a vivid purple color when mixed with alcohol and could permanently dye silk. Rather than throwing the purple substance away, Perkin continued studying it and eventually commercialized it. Known as Mauveine, aniline purple, or Perkins Mauve, it became the first commercially successful synthetic dye. Before then, many vivid colors had to be obtained from plants, minerals, or even insects. They were expensive and difficult to produce consistently. Perkins' failed experiment not only made purple clothing more widely available, but also helped drive the development of the modern synthetic dye and chemical industries.